them against the rigor bar, and making sure that at the very least you're assessing each part of the standard.
Okay.
And so that's just literally going to require you pulling up Georgia standards, pulling out the verb there, and making sure that it's hitting it like at its most basic level.
Right.
But what I want to do is literally think about what an assessment would look like that would push them beyond the very basic level of what's in the standard, because you're hitting that. You're hitting like the very basic of what's in the standard between these two, the more formative weekly assessments that you're doing, as well as the unit assessment. Sure. I really feel like you can take them to that next level.
Right.
And like in being able to evaluate, like having a problem and saying, why is this answer correct? And getting them to be able to have to explain, like, well, this is correct, like, you know, I'm just thinking of like the types of questions you could ask related to data that would, if you were teaching to that kind of material, their level of understanding and their level of thinking would be so much greater.
Right.
And like we can walk through like what an example of what that would look like, but if they can, like, they're getting this, like you said, they need to be pushed. 97, 96, 96, 94.
I think they can do it too. And it's funny that you should mention that, because the way that I teach them, I do make them I make them defend their answer. Why is this the correct answer? Teach, and the best way I know how to do it is to say, teach Miss Wiggins, teach me how I should do it. What do I look for first? And I think one of the other things that I didn't put in my initial goal or vision was to have students who also had great test taking skills, because a lot of the, we're right next to a really big private school, and I know that they're doing it with their kids because I have friends that went there and I could see their work and see what their teachers were doing with them. I don't accept anything. I can run out to my car if you need to see it, but my kids are not, they can't turn in just this to me with just the answer. I teach them, as I'm teaching to them, I tell them, anytime you see how many more children chose blank over blank, they have to underline how many more, and they know that it means, how many more means subtract. This is an example, rounding to the nearest 10, read the problem and circle about so you know to estimate. On all of their tests, I won't accept it if they haven't done that. And then they circle.
Okay, so they have to show you the process.
They show me the process on there. But I could do a better job of making sure every student, but I haven't done that. That's just how I teach, and I thought that would just be something that would be, it is beneficial for everybody, but that's something that I'm just really big on in my classroom, because I don't want it any other way. I won't accept it.
That's important. That's important. And that's a goal for your classroom. All of your students will be able to show their process for their thinking. So what I would push you to say is that I want all of your students to be able to show their process for their thinking for more rigorous types of questions.
Okay.
And so this is a process, like you're working on your next unit assessment, right? You said you're working on that one right now that you're going to begin soon. I want to work with you on creating an assessment that has those questions where they're answering why, where they're evaluating, where they're creating, and getting it to that higher level, and where they're writing.
Yeah, because this is probably the only one that really hits that. And looking at the two tally tables, and could the survey of the group help you predict the class
And even
results?
that's a yes or no, but it doesn't follow up with explain why.
Exactly.
And so this is what the lens that I want you to think through from now on. Your kids, they have the knowledge. You're able to teach them to that knowledge level. But if you start with an assessment item that you're planning from, daily objectives that requires them to evaluate between two different choices and explain why one is more logical than the other, what is your teaching going to look like?
Right.
Because in your daily lessons, you're going to have to like model what this looks like, show them the process of doing this, and it's going to take it to like a whole different level. If you know that by the end of this week or the end of this unit, they're going to have to be able to literally write something explaining their thinking where they have to evaluate two different sets of data, so that's what I want to work with you on.
Yeah, because, that's really, really, really good. Because
like your instruction is solid, and now if you have in your mind like, oh, they're going to have to answer certain types of questions, their solid instruction is going to include different pieces. It's not necessarily that your instruction is going to change, it's going to include different pieces.
And how I teach will be more effective because I'm teaching at an accelerated level.
Right. So, and I know you're starting to ask those questions of why in your lessons, but I want you to maybe even do quick, like, just a mental check, like, how many times did I ask above the knowledge level? Because I know in my first observation, you asked questions there were a lot of, like, knowledge level questions, and I was like, oh, I wanted her to ask, more in-depth, more proving questions.
Okay.
So it's almost, as just a matter of habit, as a next step, I want you to just like self-evaluate in your daily lessons, how many times do I go up to the higher levels of blooms that go beyond the knowledge pieces. Knowledge and comprehension. What is my acronym? Kyle can't accurately analyze all equations. Knowledge and comprehension. Being at the bottom and getting to that level where they're creating and evaluating
on their own
on a daily basis, and you're pushing them to do that.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is just something that I want you to do on an ongoing basis. You don't have to necessarily capture it anywhere in writing, but just a mental check after each lesson. Did I take it to the higher level of blooms? Even maybe keep a tally chart of how many times you take it to that next level. Because that's going to be the only thing that's going to allow them to be successful on an assessment that's more rigorous.
Right.
Requiring them to hit those levels. So
that's true.
Okay, so that's just like an ongoing thing that I would love for you to begin.
No, I would like to do that too, because I think sometimes I hit it and sometimes I know when I haven't hit it, because I can just tell if I were to follow up with something, or in their daily write about it, and usually will say something to, where did I put this child's in? Something to that effect, and they'll be lost. How does place value help you write numbers in different ways? Those are questions. So I think what I should start aiming to do is making sure I am answering these, and I make my kids answer them and talk them out with me. But I feel like if I find a way to ask and answer that question with regard to another part of the lesson, then by the time they do get there, they won't be as reliant on me for help and assistance to get the answers that they get. And I try to get them to do it on their own and walk around and ask them specific questions to get them thinking that way on an individual level. But I would like to get to the point where they are doing it on their own.
And I would love for you to let these higher types of questions guide the creation of your key points.
Right.
I don't want it to be like an afterthought. I want it to like literally be the substance of your lesson. So